Hi, I'm Kevin Rutherford. Welcome to RG's Talent Tips. Today I'm going to show you how to reduce your stress level by 10x. When asked to define what stress is, we may well come up with words that describe how we might feel, such as tension, anxiety, or panic. Or it might just be things that cause us to feel this way, the pressure and their implications in our busy lives, both in and out of work. Stress has come to mean both the causes and the effects of feelings of pressure. However, this general view of stress can cause confusion and can be misleading. There may well be what I would think of either as positive or negative results that arise from a stressful situation. For our purposes today, I'll be using the word stress as a more like a neutral term to describe the experience of reacting to pressures. So let's dive right in. To understand what stress is, it's useful to consider the continual demands that are made on us every day and our ability to meet those demands. So what I want to do real quickly is kind of show you something here. This is a little what I call a tightrope, the stress tightrope here. And when we're looking, I'm just going to kind of walk through. At the very top, we think of it as in terms of demands, and then what we call perceptions that we have about what is the demand and what is the perception. All of that is based on what we call constraints, right? Because constraints are actually what limit our capacity to meet the demand and then make things seem greater. Now, the other side of this balancing act is what we call supports. Okay? So when we look at supports, they really help us to meet or either manage that demands. And so the demands and the constraints are what really create the pressure. The effect on us then is what we call stress. So in short, stress is the interpretation of demands, constraints, and also supports that then really determine our response. And each one of us will see the situation through our own lens, and then it is our perception of those demands, right? The perception of those demands that will really determine whether we are feeling stressed or not. Now, equally, our responses are going to be influenced by what else is going on at the time. Makes sense, right? So the interplay of constraints, demands, and supports is endlessly variable. The same situation may or may not lead to stress for an individual at any given moment in time. So again, stress then is a response to the perceived relationship between the demands on us and our ability to cope. So let's take a quick example. Let's look at Abdullah. So Abdullah has been given a complex new project by his boss. And his reaction, his approach to dealing with it, and ultimately his performance will be influenced by several different factors. So let's say something like including perhaps maybe what Abdullah thinks about his job and the part it plays in his life. Whether he feels sufficiently skilled to cope with the work involved in the new project that he's about to take on. Maybe it's whether he sees the project as an opportunity for career development, or does he see it as a tedious extra chore that his boss has assigned him? Or maybe another example would be whether he is even interested in this project or not. So while there's no objective measure of how anyone will or should respond to a situation, we can certainly learn to attune our responses and the demands, constraints, and supports in our lives, and then use that kind of awareness to create more control over the circumstances around us, and more importantly, our reaction to them. When we feel stressed, we often feel out of control. Identifying what is going on is an important first step in us reducing our stress level. So here's a quick mental exercise that may help you with what I call the actions that you can take to understand your stress. Number one, remember that stress arises from the interplay of demands, constraints, and supports. And then also recognize that managing stress involves a balancing act, right? You can see here the balancing act between those elements. And now one way of doing this is to think of the last time that you really felt pressured, and then I want you to take out a piece of paper and write out this. What were the demands? what were the constraints, and what were the supports that you experienced. Number 3, ask and answer yourself these questions. Can you prevent this situation from building up again? What were the warning signs? Can you think of any action you could take to correct the imbalance? So, again, think about that. Now that you have a little bit better understanding of stress, I want to share with you one of my favorite ways to meet the pressures of stress head on, because it's a doozy, right? If you don't already have this approach built into your DNA, you need to, because this technique is so simple yet very powerful. So what I want you to do now is to consider and develop really for yourself a personal framework of guiding principles or beliefs that determine what stress actions or triggers are acceptable to you. These beliefs will then underpin your relationships, your expectations of others, and more importantly, yourself in relationship to others. They will specify the value that you place on people and the value that you give to yourself. It's important, however, that we really translate those beliefs into behaviors. Behaviors are really what's key, not only for ourselves, but for those that we expect from others. Finding the kind of that right balance between what we believe and what others believe can be difficult. Now, that's especially true where our work role is involved. But a sense of beliefs, having a personal code, if you will, is an important part of stress management. It helps us to clarify what we believe holds true in relationships, and it can identify personal limits and boundaries, and it does away with the doubt about how we should be or act in a certain situation. Each belief carries with it the responsibility of applying it to not only yourself, but to others as well, because it cannot be one-sided. So now let's kind of take a moment to explore this further with an example that I want to share with you from one of our former leadership course students, Julie. Julie often found herself overloaded at work, and she would spend her free time doing favors for other people. When she discussed this with her colleagues in our leadership course, where we were really dealing with stress, she realized that she was trying to please others and had not really thought about what was good for her. She was not valuing herself and her needs, and she rated other people's opinion of her higher than her own. By working on and understanding and really knowing what was important to her, and we did this by creating a personal stress code, she was able to define her limits and her boundaries, build her stress tolerance, and boost her self-esteem. So now let's take a look at what a personal stress code might look like. So I'm going to bring this over here. Now this is actually just a partial list from some of the things that we have created in a bigger one, and I'll share that with you in a moment. But in this graphic, you can see here's a few examples based on a set of beliefs. So this first one, you're asking yourself, let's say this is one of those behaviors, I am worth being treated with respect. That's one of your actual values. I'm worth being treated with respect. Another one could be, I say no when I feel that it is, and this is really key, justified. Not to say no because I say no, but when I feel it is justified, and I want to be able to do that without feeling guilty, right? Because too many times I say, no, I can't do it, and you feel guilty about it. Another example might be is, I can make mistakes, right? And then try to correct them. And also, I think most importantly, learn from them. That's another kind of belief that we might want to look at. So here's another kind of code that we'd look. Here's a fourth one. I deserve to be listened. This is really important. We hear this a lot of times when we're doing this in the class and stress tolerance. A lot of people say, I deserve to be listened to, and most importantly, taken seriously. Okay? Now, again, these are just a couple of examples. So if you want the full kind of listing of the personal stress code worksheet that has a ton more examples, stop the video now and click the link below. Now let's take a look at some additional belief ideas to really reduce stress that you can use for yourself and others in the workplace. Because these responsibilities apply particularly to the manager's role, and implicit in them, quite frankly, is the element of choice. So let's take another look at our next one. These are workplace stress code examples here. So let's say you're trying to create something and you're saying, I want to create my stress code for work. What's an example? What's a belief that I have? And here's a really good one because we get this all the time in our classes, is I can leave at a reasonable time, right? Would you love to be able to, a reasonable time using any benefits of, let's say, flex time, and have a responsibility to ensure that my staff does what? That my staff does too. So it doesn't only apply to me having a reasonable time frame, it applies to my staff as well. Let's take another one that we might want to say, what's a workplace code that I have? What's a non-negotiable? And that is, I can take time to reflect and also take stock and allow others to do this as well. Okay? I think that's really important, taking time to reflect. Another behavior that we might want to look at would be, I can admit my, and I'm going to say, vulnerable points, meaning where are some of my weaknesses, to both my boss and my family. Next, I have a responsibility to monitor the well-being of any, and I'm going to say staff, that I manage. Okay? So again, here you have more examples from a workplace perspective. You've seen personal, what am I willing to have as kind of non-negotiables for me personally? Now what am I willing to have more as non-negotiables in the workplace? So again, if you want the full workplace stress code worksheet with even more examples, stop the video now and then click the link below. Now, you can combine the workplace and personal stress code behaviors into one giant master list if you like, or you can keep them separate. It's really your choice. But more importantly, one thing that I want you to remember is this: you don't have to act on all of these beliefs, because quite frankly, some of them may put you in a circumstance that will create a consequence between you and someone else, create some tension between you and other people. That could be a little bit uncomfortable. But also, what I've given you here, add your own, right? Put your own in there. So the good thing though is if you do this, you may also point out areas where your stress tolerance is at risk, and if you do not tackle the beliefs that you hold, or more importantly, that are held in the workplace or even at home, it's going to create problems. So now that you kind of have an idea of both worksheets, you've seen them, it's time to put it all together. If you want to reduce, to really get a 10x reduction in your stress level, I want you to take action now to work on your beliefs. Two quick things to remember. Number one, recognize that acting on the beliefs will depend on the circumstances that you're in. Number two, recognize that beliefs are one thing, action is another. You can't just think about it, you have to act on it. So here's two actions that you can take right now. Use the list that I shared with you earlier as starting points to develop your own personally relevant stress code, both for personal and work. Combine it if you like, but pay particular attention to those areas that you have difficulty with. And then next, use the beliefs to guide your inner voice in those difficult times. And so I'll give you an example. We've actually had some people in our classes, they came back afterwards and sent us back some feedback. And here's one of the things they said. So if there's a lot of pressure at work, say like to work late or to work on the weekends, and you're not prepared to miss an important social occasion, maybe it's going to your child's soccer game, maybe it's a date night with your spouse, whatever the case may be, that repeat to yourself saying, I have a right to say no, can prepare you to renegotiate the current expectation about either working late or on weekends. It's really important that you do that. You have to have your own code. Now, also, you need to share this with your boss, right? Make sure that they have a good understanding that what you're looking for. So in sum, understanding your profile and the triggers that you have internally is going to make your day-to-day life much more manageable. Think of it really as your guiding light, your North Star, or as I like to say, the white lines on the road that's going to keep you on a stress-free path. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something that you can apply right away. If you did and want more, please subscribe to our channel below and check out our website for even more content, handouts, and free tools that will take you from where you are to where you want to be. Until next time.